Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us so much. I'm Jason from the Gig Economy Podcast, and tonight we have Dave, the Uber slave from good old Los Angeles, California, and we're just going to have a little chat about Proposition 22 and AB5. He had popped on, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, I think the week before the election, and we kind of went back and forth on it, and I was like, oh, man, we need to have a conversation about this, so that's kind of what we're going to do tonight. So, Dave, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you so much, Dave. And I think we should specify, just because of the whole timing, this was not a week before the big election. This was the week before the election of the Proposition 22, which did go ahead and got passed. But Dave, why don't you spend a little bit of time talking about, for people who don't know anything about what AB5 and Proposition 22 is and what it does for you, just tell a little bit in short strokes what it does, what it is in California.
I want to point out, too, that there was a 42% no vote on a proposition where the most money that was ever spent on a proposition, $200 million. Right. And there was still a 42% no.
Wow.
Correct. Yeah, no, definitely. But so for people who don't know what Assembly Bill 5 is, just tell us a little bit about what that is.
AB5?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
AB5.
So Assembly Bill 5. Now, it is kind of crazy how things get passed in California without the vote of the public. Like, we had a gas tax that the legislature, we have a super legislature here. So They kind of just do whatever they want. And they were able to pass up gas tax without us ever voting on it, which I think is insane.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem right.
Very similar situation with AB5. Even though I was for Prop 22 and I like AB5, I realize that it's affected a lot of people and workers and industries negatively that work as subcontractors, people in entertainment, even my friend, he's a pool man, and they were having issues being able to hire people the way they were in the past. And people were losing work because of this bill. So it's, no bill's perfect, but it had like good intentions.
Right. So basically, it just touches on the fact on whether or not an employee is able to classify an employer is able to classify an employee as a contract worker or as an employee. Correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's what that is, and then let's talk about the Proposition 22, which goes in and then talk about, because what AB5 did was it went in and said, for companies such as Uber and Lyft, who were before contract workers, now the drivers has to be employees. And why is it that was something that you felt was a good idea, Dave?
Okay, so this all started over 2 years ago.
Yep.
The rates. So I started driving about 5 years ago. The rates were exactly 5 years ago, actually. So the rates were okay. Like you're not going to get rich driving Uber at that point in time.
Sure.
I think it was just over $1 a mile in Los Angeles. And then as soon as I started, they started cutting the rates. And we got together. There was some organizing going on of drivers. This was like the very early stages. And we all went to Uber headquarters, and we went to LAX. And we protested. And right away, unions got involved. They were like, hey, you know what? We appreciate what you guys are doing. We want to support you guys. They supplied, I remember the first major protest we had, they supplied a bus for us to be able to get in and out of the airport.
Oh, nice.
Move around. And so obviously, the unions, they see dollar signs. Like,
yeah.
Like they want that money. They're like, oh, here's a whole new group of workers that we can like get in there. And I would love to see no unions. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where that's all we had. Like, sure. if we wanted to go to battle with Uber and Lyft and as people, like everybody that was showing up at these protests, they loved driving. Like they loved what they were doing, and they wanted it to be. They wanted to just be treated reasonably. They felt like cutting rates. And then at one point, I can't remember the exact date, but there was a march. If it wasn't last year, it was the year before, where suddenly they cut the rates 25%. They made it to where you got more for your time, but per mile is really where we made money.
Yep.
And they cut it down to 60 cents a mile.
Ooh, in LA? Wow.
Yeah. So all the organizing efforts, like they went from, like a couple hundred people showing up to a lot more people getting involved. So I think that's really where the traction came in and that's when, okay, so there was in the beginning, it was drivers organizing.
Yep.
And it was a real grassroots situation. And then the name in Los Angeles became Rideshare Drivers United.
Okay. Yep. I think I've heard about that group. Yep.
So being like at the first protest that I've ever heard of, like that was who I knew about. Rideshare Drivers United. They have the green shirts. I have one right here. And these guys are cool. Like I really felt like I was hanging out with drivers and we were doing a good thing. And then this other organization, I never heard of them in my life, called Mobile Workers Alliance comes along. And the first time I hear about them was, I believe, last year.
Oh, that's MWA. Sorry.
Yes.
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 Okay. Yep.
So all of a sudden they just pop out of nowhere last year. And the first I heard of them, they got a bill passed in Monrovia, which is just like a small random city in way east of Los Angeles. And they made some kind of minimum wage, like $30 per hour minimum wage bill.
Wow.
In this one little small section of Los Angeles. So it's like, I don't think they were ever able to actually enforce that.
Okay.
But that was when I first heard of them. And then I signed up for their thing because I want to know everything that's going on. And right away they did this caravan, which was just like what Cesar Chavez did. Well, not just like.
Yeah, let's clarify.
We basically they got a bunch of cars together and we cruised up to Sacramento. We went by Uber headquarters. We stopped in Fresno to pay homage to Cesar Chavez. I thought it was really interesting because there was a much more top-down approach and people were like calling shots. Whereas when I was with Rideshare Drivers United from the beginning, the first couple years of protesting, it felt like we were doing this together. There wasn't a leader per se. There was people that were leading in the organizing efforts, but nobody was telling anybody what to do. It was just like, hey, we're going to come and join us. We're going to protest, Now SEIU's involved, and that's where it really seemed like, they're looking for the money. Like I realized, I look at it like unions are there to do good things. Like I don't think people go to college and get their degree and get a job at the union because they're looking to make money. I think these are people that want to help the common man. But of course, like with everything, there's money involved.
Sure.
Basically, the struggle, there's a fight between these different union organizations to who's going to become the union of record for rideshare drivers.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but then there's also DoorDash, Instacart, Rideshare Drivers United. They're really only looking to unionize the drivers.
Okay.
At the moment, we'll see what happens. So I would love if, like, my whole thought is like, it's a long shot, but let's get this bill passed and let's, I'll do what I can to make sure people know about Rideshare Drivers United, because I feel like the leadership there is more like they're going to really care about the driver. Whereas, Mobile Workers Alliance, that was SEIU 721, which is in downtown Los Angeles, their office. Like I appreciate everything that they've done because they brought a whole lot of money into this thing. Like if it wasn't for them, there wouldn't be the 15 million or whatever it was spent on the no side. But, I think there's something seriously wrong with Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and Instacart being able to get together, introduce this bill on their own, and spend $200 million promoting it, lobbying, all the things that they were able to do to get this bill passed. But I mean, that's the world we live in, I guess.
Yeah, don't you think a lot of other companies do that too? Maybe not to the extent of 200 million, but GM's done that. all those other companies have done lobbying. So I actually didn't have a huge problem with it. No one likes to see it, but I mean, it's just it's just what we do in America. You lobby, which I don't like it, but what are you going to do?
The part that bothers me is when I talk to people and then I realize that they've been misinformed. They're misunderstanding the situation. They think, Uber said, hey, like to the passengers, your rates are going to go up if this bill passed, which is probably true. So I guess there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But then the drivers, they're convincing them, which isn't really in their best interest. They're like, hey, you're going to lose your flexibility, when really there's no reason why we should lose our flexibility. In Los Angeles in particular, there is so many trips to be taken. They think like, oh, all of a sudden, like the drivers are under the impression that there's going to be less rides because people won't be able to afford them. Or,
well, I think the problem was, and sorry to interrupt, but we as people from Michigan that aren't dealing with this, we looked at it like, well, if they got to pay them benefits, they're going to make them work a certain amount of hours. So that, a driver that may have only worked 20 hours a week is now working 32 or maybe more. So there's going to be less rides for other drivers. That's kind of how we looked at it.
Well, and just to follow up real quick, Jason, I mean, so you guys are in California, of course, and in giant markets, right? So we are from smaller to medium-sized markets, and already here, and this was even pre-COVID, a lot of times there's way too many drivers. And so at that point, when you are in an oversaturated market and we see the potential of AB5 maybe spreading, going to, that whole thing that all of a sudden we now have to be employees and no longer can be contract workers, then what we saw was, well, then why would they? I mean, they have no reason to keep us on. They can fire us at the heartbeat because there's already too many drivers.
Well, they already fire us at a heartbeat here.
And sure. So anyways, keep going, Dave. I'm sorry.
So they're being misled in the way, like a lot of drivers thought that, oh, we're only going to be able to work 30 hours now. We're going to get our time cut because they don't want to provide benefits like medical. They won't pay overtime. So we're not going to be able to work over 40 hours a week. Like all these things though, like I would have liked to seen it pass just to see what they do. One thing I know for sure, I see things. I think a lot. So I thought a little further into these situations and I realized they're going to have to pay overtime. It's going to be in their best interest to pay overtime in some cases. They're going to also need to pay extra money certain times when, like, just like they do now, they have to pay extra or else they're not going to have enough drivers on a Saturday night or whatever it is. People think that there wouldn't be any surge anymore. Like there's all these ideas. But I saw it as nothing really would change very much other than their need to comply with labor laws, such as in California, if you work 6 hours, you have to get a 30-minute break. So nobody would be able to just continue through 6 hours anymore. They would have forced you to take a break at some point. I was thinking they would probably have us work like 6-hour blocks. But then if you end up in Orange County and it's going to take me 2 hours to drive home, well, they can't just be like, okay, you're done now. Like they have to pay me to get at least past at least into LA County or something. Yeah. Like there's so many like complicated things that they would have had to figure out. And that's, I believe why they just don't, and this is the most important part of the whole issue is the way Uber and Lyft make money. And the way this is just like a gold mine for them is because they have drivers that pop onto the app like so many times. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted AB5 or the big ones. So many times, like at least once a week, I would turn on my app and not get a trip for maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. If it was 2 hours, I'm just like, what is going on? Yeah. Like, is the app not working? But no, that wasn't the problem. Like they just, the saturation, like you were talking about. So I wanted them to be forced to keep us busy. Like, it's like, yeah, we have to start at 4 when we really wanted to start at 2, let's say. Something like that might be a problem for a driver. But at least we know when we started, we're going to be getting paid. They wouldn't be able. And so they make so much money having all these drivers that come onto the app. They're like, okay, I'm available for a trip. And you're just sitting there waiting for trips, even when you're in the middle. And then all of a sudden you just did a couple trips and now you can't get a trip. Like that benefits them because they don't need to do anything for us at that point. They have somebody on tap that can make them money, but we're just sitting here not making anything.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And so that is what I hated. That's why I wanted the number one reason why I wanted this Build-A-Pass.
Well, and I agree 100%. You know, both me and Jason, obviously being seasoned drivers here as well. I mean, we see the same here. You know, that is the same way that obviously Uber and Lyft does in all the markets, at least here in America. And you're right. That is the worst, right? You go out and you drive, you're out. Like I've had nights where I went out 5-6 hours and I came home and I didn't even have $70 to show for it, right? It's like, what? And it's like that. Those are not fun nights. But you know, and from that perspective, yes, absolutely. It's best to, it would be much better if they would keep us busy and stuff. But then on the other side of it though, I mean, lots and lots of great nights where I'm never slow, right? And we talk a lot about finding the right times to drive in your market. There's a little bit of almost a little bit of a science behind it, you know, where you can kind of, you can't just turn on the app and drive. And then of course we have all the stupid people on Facebook that goes, when should I drive and where should I be and all that stuff, right? Like, well, you go figure that out yourself, right? But it's that. So that's talking about the science behind and the experience behind being an effective rideshare driver.
Yeah, I mean, you want to believe that, you know, you're out there, you're fishing. You know, you want to get the big fish there. You don't know what's going to happen. Like there's some excitement to that. Unfortunately, they're using that to their advantage. And here in Los Angeles, I figured out that if I'm driving for Uber and I get a trip to the airport and then I get to pick up the airport and then that's to downtown, boom, I just made $100 in 2 hours. Well, guess what? The rest of my day is going to suck. Might as well just go home because I've just capped my earnings. And unless I get lucky and there's like a shortage of drivers, I just happen to be in the right place. The odds are once I've made a good chunk of money in a real short period of time, suddenly I'm low priority. And that's why you realize like no matter who the drivers are, we all make about the same. You know, it shouldn't be that way. Some people should be getting lucky and some people less lucky. But instead, like we all kind of make about the same at the end of the week. And I believe the algorithm is set up to do that.
Really?
And I don't like that. I want to know. I want transparency. I want to know if I'm going to be put in a low priority situation because I did really good early on in the day. That like, look, hey, you just made $100 in 2 hours. If you keep working the next 5 hours, you're probably only going to make $50 or $80. It's like, okay, then I can just go home. Like I won't waste. I'll do something else with these 5 hours.
Yeah. So you really think the algorithm does that I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't because we don't know how it works. If someone could figure that out, that would be great. But so you think that if you make a lot of money, they're like, okay, this guy's made enough. Let's spread the wealth. Because to me, in my head, Uber's number one goal doesn't matter how much you've made. They want to get butts in the seats. And
I think that over my experience of driving and seeing that happen. And then also like being in a spot that's busy, like in Hollywood and seeing, I'm just waiting for a trip. I can't get a trip. And I'm watching all these people getting picked up for the next 15, 20 minutes.
That's true.
By all these different drivers. And I can't even get a trip. I'm like, what happened?
That's a good point.
Yeah. But also realize I'm in probably one of the busiest, at least in the United States, probably one of the busiest places for Uber drivers of any city.
Well, and you're in the city where it all started.
Yeah. And Los Angeles is kind of like, there's a lot of people that like, I like to drive. Nothing scares me, but there's a lot of people that are actually scared to drive here. And so there's people that also, there's no parking here. So there's people that are using Uber to get to their yoga class. They use it for everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we have that here in Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is tiny compared to LA, right? But we have huge parking problems downstairs, downtown, and people just they do the same thing. They just take an Uber. It's for them it's $5. It doesn't matter. So,
I mean, there's people like a lot of it's expensive to live here. So people are going to get a car. A lot of people, they're going to go get a BMW or a Mercedes, brand new, lease it, buy it, whatever. And they realized when they did the math that the amount of money that they have to pay on insurance and the lease for a car like that, they actually pay half that if they just use Uber all the time.
Right. Yeah. It makes no sense.
We had several regulars in our market, like, so we know a lot of the regular drivers, right? But several regular drivers here have the same type of customers all the time. They have these people who they walk or they take Ubers. That's it.
Yeah.
So let's go back. I was interested in your comment saying you don't really like unions, but you want all this stuff. So I kind of like that, right? Because you want more for the driver, but you don't want these, money hungry unions to get involved, which I like. What is your ideal thought of what would you want if you got to be like, okay, this is what we want? I mean, within reason, don't say like $5 a mile or anything, because we all want that. But I mean, in reason, what would you want to see Uber and Lyft do? Maybe not just in your market, but let's say in America itself, and just see. I'm just curious what your thought is if you had to control.
I'm friends with a lot of YouTubers. You guys know Dustin.
Oh yeah, he's been on the show a few times.
Rideshare Professor, Harry the Rideshare Guy. Like, we all feel the same way. Like, look, just pay us what you used to pay us. Give us over $1 a mile and we'll shut up. You know? Like, it's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah, we got cuts too. I think what are we at, Jesper? I mean, because we haven't driven much with the pandemic, but I think 67 cents a mile or 70 cents a mile.
I think so. And then I think the XL is still 85 cents a mile, something like that. I'm not 100% sure. Again, it's been about 6 months since I've driven people.
So you're basically saying if they paid you the rates that you had when you started, you would be happy. You would be like, okay, this is fine.
Yeah, and a lot of them, like Rideshare Professor in particular, he talks about a true contractor model. So also give us the money, but stop manipulating us into driving where you want us to drive, and just quit with the manipulation. Let us be true contractors and pay us enough. And we're happy. Like, we love this job.
Well, exactly. Everybody wants the flexibility, right? But I agree with what you're saying about also wanting the what was the word you were using? The transparency of the model and how they're coming up with these things. Because obviously the number one complaint we have all, here, and I don't want to get into, the whole, talk about it, but the whole thing about people are saying, well, Uber takes all this money. Why? I'm not getting what I used to get. No, you are getting what you used to get, but they take more. Sure. So that whole discussion, right? And I can agree with you that definitely Uber takes too much.
So you're not
in some cases 50%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Some rides are definitely more than 50%. Yeah, and they don't need that, right?
And then why are they taking 50%? Like, why is it random, right? Like, why is it? Shouldn't it be like a flat rate?
It was upfront pricing. Once they developed upfront pricing, they were able to charge the passenger one thing, and be like, "Oh, hey, we're just going to pay you what we agreed to pay you per mile in time. Yeah, we're going to charge the passenger whatever we want."
Yeah.
Well, and then they blame the inaccuracy of the model, and some of them we're going to lose on, some we're going to win on. It's going to be okay at the end. No, you're going to win on all of them.
And honestly, like, I should be fine. Like, I'm in this protest because I want to see people treated well.
Yeah.
But me personally, I do pretty good. There's very few weeks where I would work, let's say 35 to over 40 hours. Very few weeks would I make less than $30 an hour at the end. But of course, there was a couple $100 hours there. Yeah. Think about that. Like $200 hours in a 40-hour week where I made $900.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time just like not making much money.
But that's you knowing, and that's you being smart about the way you're driving, and that you're using your experience over the last 5 years to get there, because that's the same time as us, right? We know that, well, if I would start, so I've always just been a weekend warrior. And so if I would start Friday night at 6, and Jason will shake his head at me because it's right. The first 2 hours are dead. I would do almost nothing, right? Because it's really not worth it to start until 8 or 9. I do it because I think it's fun, and I go out and, that kind of stuff. And it was my way of, I called it my therapy, yada, yada. But I knew if I didn't do the last 2 hours, my night would suck. right? If you don't do those 11 to 3, then you might as well not go home and might as well not go out, because the first hours of the night, you're going to average $15, $20 an hour if you're lucky. But the rest of the 2 hours is going to kick your whole average up to $30, $35 an hour. And then all of a sudden it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, so that's us using the experience and knowing that we have to stay out.
But also, like, one thing that would drive me crazy, it's like you're bringing back memories. So I love Saturday nights. If I didn't work at all, I would work on a Saturday. Like, I might take the whole week off, but I'm like driving home from vacation to get out there and work on Saturday because I know I'm going to make so much money. But I would have times where I'm just like, all right, cool. You know, I'm looking at where I'm at. I'm trying to set myself up for 2 a.m.
Yeah.
The bars close here at 2 a.m.
Same here.
Then at 1:30, I get a trip, and it's taking me to Simi Valley, which is a great trip because, like, I mean, that's not the end of the world. I'm going to be not too far from my house when I'm done.
Yeah,
like, worse would be if it takes me like deep Orange County, like Santa Ana. I'd be like, oh shoot. So that's what would suck, because now I'm not positioned to be near Hollywood or Santa Monica or downtown. Right. That's where you got to be in Los Angeles when 2 a.m. hits. So I would log off at 1:30, you know, because I'm just like, dude, I do not want to end up in Newhall at 2 a.m. Because, you know, and then we get Saturday night traffic too. So you think you might be able to zip, you know, 20, 30 minutes back to where you want to be, but that might not be possible.
That was one night I got my second speeding ticket because I was trying to sit back into the zone.
See, at 1 a.m. in Grand Rapids on the highways, it's wide open. I mean, if you wanted to do 150, you could do that to get. And Jesper was doing probably 100.
No, I was doing 110. No, that's no, I wasn't. I think I was doing 90. But anyways, the same thing. I remember us sitting downtown Grand Rapids, and we would watch the surge grow. Right, we wouldn't accept it. And once it hit 155, we wouldn't accept anything unless it had at least a 3 to 4 point surge on it at the time. This was back when it was a
multiplier,
as opposed to just that other new one. And we would do the same thing. We would just, you know, sit like a little group of drivers, 5 or 6 drivers together, and we would just, no, I'm not taking that one. I'm not taking that one. I'm not taking that one. And then, you know, once it hit after 2 o'clock, and all of a sudden the surge would go skyrocket, and we start taking them. And same thing, right? You kind of you use your experience, you know what to do, and you start. That's how you make your money at the end.
Yeah.
It's a little different in California now, though, right? Because they kind of gave you everything trying to fight off this thing. So you know where you're going every time, right? Regardless of acceptance rate. Like, that doesn't matter anymore in California.
Okay, so yeah, I stopped driving in March when the pandemic started. I was also, I forgot to mention, I was deactivated by Uber in March.
Oh, you were?
Why?
Because of the
They
channel?
wouldn't say. In California, you don't have to tell, and I think they learned their lesson in the past.
Yep.
They stopped telling drivers why they're deactivating them because it's evidence in the lawsuits.
Correct.
Yep.
So, but they won't tell me. But I do. There's so many like people send them messages, deactivate this guy because of my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I have a video where I'm going 100 miles an hour, but like there's no way to show that that's actually like it says it on the screen, but it doesn't. It's not my speedometer. It's just like a little digital thing on the. So I mean, there's all these things that people speculate. Oh, it's because you drove minors, or you know. But when my whole channel's one of the biggest thing is that this whole minor situation is so screwed up. Like they need to like. You know, they kind of trick, like there's a lot of drivers even today that don't know they're not supposed to drive minors.
I know, it's ridiculous.
And all that we need to do in order for us to be able to drive minors is to get fingerprinted.
Okay.
And so there's these lawsuits, like Jackie Lacey, I believe it was suing Uber and Lyft to get them to fingerprint and do better background checks like 3 years ago. And they won. So they don't have to fingerprint drivers still, which is just insane to me. went on a bit of a tangent there. What were we talking about?
Oh no, it's fine.
We were just reminiscing about good old days. But going back to where we were, absolutely, and we agree as well, Dave, with the fact that Uber and Lyft should pay better. There was a good old days where we were being paid a lot better than we are today. And yes, Uber and Lyft is making much more, at least in our markets. I don't remember actually them lowering the rate that we have had. Like you mentioned, you experienced that they actually went and changed your rate 25%.
No, they did, Jesper. When I first started, we had 2 rate cuts before they stopped doing it.
Oh, that was then before I started.
Yeah. That was going across the country, and we're like, oh, I wonder if January if we're going to get another rate cut, and then they stopped doing it. But
getting to 60 cents was our 4th rate cut. And they sold it just like they do every time they make a change. They sold it to us as this is going to be so much better for you guys to make lots of money.
Of course.
That's another thing I wanted to mention earlier. So I started when there was no bonuses, nothing. And I made about 940 hours. All of a sudden, they changed everything. They did these bonus situations. They made us much more productive. I'm picking up people where I'm dropping off people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have way less time where there's nobody in the car, and I'm still making about 900 a week for 40 hours.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute. This doesn't seem right.
Something ain't right here.
So what we were talking about earlier when we got sidetracked, I was saying that you get to know where California gets to know where you're going.
So they were showing us.
Yeah, that they gave you all that stuff to try to like, oh, please don't do this. Please don't do this. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on all that.
Yeah, so that was great. Lyft was annoying because you had to keep a certain acceptance rate in order to see them. And with Lyft, they keep giving me these trips that are like a half hour away, which is kind of stupid. And then so I would turn down those trips because I'm working on Saturday night. So it's like, I'm in Encino and they're giving me a pickup in Newhall, which is like over a huge mountain like, off in the desert. Like
Lyft is known for that, by the way.
Oh, it happens to you guys too?
Oh yeah, I will get 25-minute like pickups, and I'm like, am I the only Lyft driver in Grand Rapids right now? This cannot be happening. I don't take them, but there must be people that do take them, but it's the dumbest thing in the world.
But Uber was
all
showing
the new
us.
drivers.
Yeah,
Uber was showing us where the pickups were, and it was awesome too because, a lot of times you would deny a trip that was too far, let's say, and that would actually be good.
Yes.
Because a driver, the chances are the way the system works, it's not perfect. And sometimes like it takes the driver to help the system work a little bit better.
Yep.
Because so like you're like, whoa, that trip's 15 minutes away, but it's all freeway. That's going to be 15 miles. I'm going to deny that trip.
Mm-hmm.
And the chances are somebody was closer that ends up getting it.
Yeah. They might have been finishing up a trip and they weren't quite ready yet. And if you would have accepted it, that wouldn't have been, it actually wouldn't have been good for the customer because you denying it and then that guy gets it and he's closer, then everyone's happy.
And like on a busy time or a busy Saturday night, you deny that trip 15 miles away, you literally get a trip like not
1 mile
even a
away.
second later. And it's, so you're just like, oh, okay, this is like really cool. So that was like awesome. But that's another thing about this fight that we've been doing, these protests. You realize if we weren't out there protesting and if AB5 didn't pass, that would have never happened.
Right.
Being able to see the trips.
True.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to, make it the image of us being treated like true contractors.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, so you keep saying were. Does that mean that after Proposition 22 passed, they took that away again?
Took what away?
Being able to. Well, he's not on Uber, and he hasn't been driving. So,
so are you guys still able to see
where you're going?
So. Okay,
I can't say for sure, but I do think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what have you been doing? So, you haven't been driving at all since March?
No.
Okay.
I bought a van and I'm turning it into a tiny home, and I've been just like, living off my savings and just I moved into my parents' house. This is, so I'm just like living the dream right now.
Yeah. You're not doing any other gigs, like you don't do anything else like Amazon Flex or Instacart or Shipped or anything like that?
Well, if I was desperate for money, that's what I would be doing.
Yeah.
But since I have my YouTube channel that I'm working on.
Oh, that's true.
And I also am building this van. I started another channel, No Limit Van Life, for the tiny home.
Okay,
build.
that's cool.
Oh, nice.
And that's just, there's so much. I just don't have time. Like, I want to get that done and then move to something else.
Yeah, I talked to Dustin. Him and I have talked offline before, and the money he makes on his YouTube channel, because I was like, aren't you worried about getting deactivated? And he's like, nah. He goes, I make enough money on my YouTube channel. They can deactivate me. It's fine. Because who else just recently got deactivated? Is it Darren? Gosh, what's his name? I can't remember, but he had a pretty popular channel too, and he got deactivated. But
yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, do you?
And I could tell you why I think I got deactivated. So there's like a kind of a 3 strikes you're out rule.
Yeah.
Remember Geo? I forget. He used to be called Rideshare Revolution. He said some stuff to some women. I'm sure he's a nice guy. He's not a creep. Okay.
Yeah.
He calls me a creep all the time. So maybe he is a creep. But 3 women reported him, and then that was it. Uber cut him off.
Ooh.
And they told him that that's what happened. He's in Chicago though.
Okay.
And then, so I think what happened to me when I first started, I got 2 reports where they deactivated me for 24 hours.
Wow.
Of me being DUI at like midnight on a Saturday when the only people that were drunk were my passengers.
Right.
Like, this is Los Angeles. Like, I mean, I know people will do whatever. I could lie or whatever, but like to DUI as an Uber driver on a Saturday night is insane.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who? I mean, I'm sure somebody would do that, but not me.
Yeah.
So, but I think what happened, even though like there was 2 false reports when I first started, I think I got another one of those reports right when I got deactivated. But I can't say. I don't know.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
It is. It kills me.
Yeah, there's no.
Every day somebody would say, "You're the best driver I've ever had."
Yeah.
So like I represented the company well. I think so.
Right.
Yeah, it is frustrating.
We had the same situations in this market here.
And that's where I would like a little protection, where I'm not like pro union. I want to stay flexible, but I also want to be like, hey, who reported me? Like, I have dash cam footage. Like, let me provide my dash cam. Tell me what ride reported me. I will pull my footage and give it to you. That's where you're kind of screwed. You're kind of at their will. At least in Michigan, I do lawn fertilization in the summer. I'm still an at-will employee, but my employer would tell me why they were firing me, and then I would have some legal recourse if it was unfounded. You know what I mean? But with Uber, it's just like, you're done. We're not going to tell you. Good luck.
It seems like the DUI situation, at least for Los Angeles, is simple. Let us just roll into a police station and get breathalyzed and checked. Do a quick, like, I'll be there in 20 minutes.
Yep.
Let's get this done. And then if I end up not being DUI, then the passenger, there should be some sort of repercussions. I should be able to sue this passenger for reporting me falsely.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So,
at least, shut him off.
Where do you think this is going to go in the future? I mean, now that this is it passed, do you think what is your goal as you're part of that organization to move forward? Is something that you guys can bring a proposition, and now mind you, I don't get involved in politics much, so maybe that's not even a possibility, but I'm just curious your thought, and then we'll kind of wrap it up.
So since it passed, I haven't even gotten an email for a meeting.
Oh, wow.
I don't think that the organization is dissolved. I think it's just, I think it's just a break. I think 2021 things will start back up again. Like Jesper mentioned in one of your earlier streams, if people would have really understood the 7/8 vote that's needed in the Senate to repeal.
Yeah, that was
22.
super complicated.
I mean, that right there should tell you that a bill shouldn't pass.
Right.
Like, that's crazy. But we do have a super majority of Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats like labor unions. So who knows? Maybe they'll get it repealed.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'm all for better treatment, like we said before when we talked to you on the streams, is like we're all for better treatment of drivers. I want a little bit more money. I don't need a ton more, but a little bit more. And I want a little bit of protection. I've not been deactivated or a 24-hour thing, but I've seen people that do it, and it sucks for them, especially when they're full-time gigsters. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they do. And it's like, oh, now you just lost a whole revenue stream for no reason. So I'd like to see that. But yeah, I know when you get the government involved, though, man, I tell you, they start nickel and diming everything, and it's just a one-way ticket to hell.
Sometimes it's okay, though, Jason. Sometimes it's
okay. Hey.
Well, I mean, if we've just been a libertarian country for the last 150 years, there'd still be slaves. So,
right.
That is true. So, hey, Dave, how can people find you?
Oh, Dave the Uber Slave, No Limit Van Life.
Okay.
Those are my YouTube channels.
Okay. Well, cool.
Awesome.
Well, we thank you very much.
Put that up there too. Yep.
Yeah, and then in the future, if we have something that we think that you'll be good to talk about, we would love to have you on. So.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Oh, thank you guys. Thanks, Jesper. Thanks, Jason.
All right. Have a good night.